All right. And here we are today again for another short. Here I go. I did it wrong again. Side fiction. Nope. Short fiction side hustle.
You had it right the first time.
I did have it right. I'll get it right eventually. Number 7. Today we are talking about another story from Stephen R. Donaldson's collection, Reeve the Just and Other Tales. This one is called The Kings of Tarshish Shall Bring Gifts. And this is one of the shorter tales in the book. It was originally published in an anthology called The Book of Kings, edited by Richard Gilliam and Martin H. Greenberg back in 1995, and then reprinted in this collection in 1999. So this was interesting because if you read the beginning forward of the book where Donaldson talks about the stories, apparently he wrote this one while going through his divorce. So that was a little interesting insight there. But
that is.
And we start off with an interesting little proverb from out of Africa in the beginning of the story, which is related to the story itself. But with that said, I have with me my usual friends. We got Chris from the Chronicle of Chris. We got Vasha from Reading by the Rainy Mountain. And we have, as a first-time guest here on Short Fiction Side Hustle, Steve from Page Chewing.
Am I crashing the party? Is that what you're saying?
No, you're
I'm bidding.
There's a trapdoor here somewhere, I'm sure.
So we managed to lure him in, and so glad to have you, Steve. And so with that all said, I would like to start with Steve with some initial impressions on this story.
Well, it's my first time reading Donaldson, actually. My first story, or my first anything reading Donaldson.
Wow.
And yeah, and I love the writing. I love the story. I'm still a little bit confused. I think a little bit unsure. So with the you know the way the story starts out, and then the prince who's having dreams and everything. I really like the story, and I'm still thinking. I just finished it like 10 minutes ago, to be honest. So it's still kind of stewing in my brain. But
yeah,
this is one of the stories that I think are ones that you'll think about after you read them, which I think is the hallmark of a good short story, especially. And it was the right length. I think it was like 40 pages long, but it definitely left you a lot of food for thought about. There's a couple of lines from the story that I wanted to bring up. One of the ones that caught my attention was, I was struck by the odd notion that the true belief of dreams comes not to those who have them, but to rather those who hear about them.
That was a great line. Great line.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few lines like that in the story that really stood out to me as well. So yeah, that's one of them. I remember that one as well. That's I think, was it the wizard or the vizier that said that? I think it was the wizard, but our narrator, this is told in first person, and our narrator is the court wizard, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely also, just really quickly, just kind of maybe think about youth and the ability to dream and to embrace these kind of, escaping reality. And as you get older, you start to become a little bit more jaded and less flexible with those kind of things, and more about reality, and not your imagination isn't as it doesn't really stretch as much as it does when you're young, because you become kind of, you start to lose touch with that side of yourself too.
Yeah, and it speaks to maybe youth being more susceptible to dreams and having the ability to dream more.
Interesting.
Well, Chris, what did you think?
I thought the story was fine, although I sort of feel Steve's thing insofar as I sort of felt when I was reading it, there's certain things that I got out of it, which is very much about youth and the folly of talented youths. Some way to speak, people that stand out. They did nothing. They were so fascinated by his gift or his talent that they did nothing to correct his behavior. So that when he became king, they had done nothing about that, but kept on saying, "God, isn't it amazing you can remember your dreams?" But I sort of felt like there was about another 4 or 5 layers of this that I was either too dumb or did not get out of the story at the time, because it definitely felt much more layered than that in the things that were kind of set up than what I got out of it. So it was definitely one of those things that was like, right, I get to speak to Jared and Varsha and now Steve, and they'll be able to tell me a bit more. Well, the kind of the 1 point that I got out of it.
Well, I'll let Vasha try to do that first. Vasha, what'd you get out of it? Vasha says hi.
Sorry, I did something and I lost my browser again and I couldn't unmute myself in time. It's weird. Anyway, I was gonna say, yeah, I rather enjoyed the story. I think it had a little bit of a mystery to it, right? Because of the setup about how he was a tyrant because of his dreams. And yeah, he was a spoiled brat, and he, is a first son after many children, or maybe after no children. I don't know. It's unclear. But he has a son, like he's been spoiled and sort of, what's the word, pampered and so on. Many people thought that that's why he's a tyrant, but the wizard thinks that it's because of his dreams. So that tracing that thread throughout, of like that mystery, I think was very essential for me to keep the story moving forward, because I can't say that I was super interested in the parts in between. But what I wanted to know the final answer to, like, why the wizard made the statement that he did in the end, right? That said, the descriptions in between were beautiful. I loved the descriptions of the dreams. And interestingly, like I did this for a lot of the other stories, but this was the story I thought, oh, this is like totally Steve's kind of author, because I know Steve likes a lot of one-liners that like interesting one-liners, which
Guilty.
this has a lot of. Yeah. Sorry, Steve, you were saying.
No, just say you nailed it. Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was that, and there is, and I think like with other authors that I've really come to appreciate, the story is always about something, right? And there's of course the themes in the smaller sections that you can sort of connect to a lot of real things, like the stuff you guys talked about the ability of youth to dream more, or just, I guess, maybe the power of dreams in particular, which also that epigraph in the beginning, I think really rounds up very well. And that was interesting. I do want to dig into that a little bit later on. But I think, and I might be sort of simplifying it from the thing that happens in the end, but finally it felt to me like a narrative or commentary on the cycle of drug abuse and maybe abuse period, like in a relationship, or just especially I think having the insight that he wrote this while going through a divorce. It felt like, I mean, I thought of drug abuse, but it could be about, relationships that you start to sour on as you start to maybe stop loving the person, and you feel like there are these moments that you want to keep holding on to, but actually if you stay with it, it might turn fatal. I think it reminded me a lot of like Scanner Darkly, which you want to have fun, and it just has too radical consequences to justify staying there, and like some people just can't get out of it, right? So it felt like that, like the king essentially died of overdose, like the Caliph, sorry, not the king, but yeah. So that's my takeaway from it, and I might be simplifying that just from the final thing where he gave him drugs, but like having that connecting thread like really brightened up the whole thing apart. Like it was a fun story, but with that connection, it made it brilliant for me.
Yeah. That's like that what you said there about um uh trying to hold on to something that you think is great but is actually harmful to you, and that's a pretty cool underlying theme, I think, there, because that's what the kid was trying to get, even though he's doing it in a really shitty way. He was trying to get that, that feeling of what the dreams are in all the time, and so that's pretty cool. I like that at all. I thought what was interesting about this story, more than the other ones that we've read so far, is he really hit you over the head in the first paragraph of what the questions he's exploring right away. Like he asked all the questions, like, what do we know of dreams? What's the truest thing to be said of them? What's you know does forgetting them must have a purpose, and hungers are conceived in dreams in order to be forgotten, which I thought was a really cool line. And the reason why, so that life may go on without the dream, and that's the reason why they are forgotten a lot. And so he spells that out right in the first paragraph, just to tell us this is basically what the whole thing's about, and that men who do not forget are doomed. So he's telling us right away that whatever character we're going to run into that doesn't forget his dreams is doomed. So as soon as that kid, that the who becomes the Caliph, starts telling people his dreams, then we know he's doomed right off the bat.
Yeah. And the setup of the mystery around why the wizard assesses that he's a tyrant because of his dreams, that was really, I think he does this pretty much in all the stories he's done this so far, I think, where there is this hook that sort of drags you through the rest of the story in the beginning, right? Like it, and of course a lot of stories have hooks. It's interesting the way he sets them up, because he almost like tells you a conclusion that they've come to towards the end, like in this one, or like tells you something that happens at the end, and now you want to know how we got there from where we are at the beginning of the story. Like that's been a big what do you say, like something that holds my interest through the stories for many of these.
Yeah, right.
It's also I find this really interesting, as I'm sure some of you did as well. Like the parallels between the other books that you're reading concurrently alongside this at the same time. Pyramids comes in an awful lot of this we've just finished by Ty Pratchett.
Yeah,
it's very much. I honestly, I was at one point I was confused at what happened in this short story and what happened in Pyramids, and whether the two kind of bled over, because there's kind of father-son dynamic in that kind of one as well. We had the Tyrant, which was obviously an absolution as well. I was like, oh my god, there's a crocodile in this as well. This is amazing, and it just makes me think about how many other things influence you're taking away from a story rather than just the story itself, because you do make these sort of links and themes that are working in other works of fiction that you're working at the time, and if they've got some sort of common through line, you can kind of go, oh, actually that actually relates to the same theme in a slightly different way than in that book, because Pyramids, I think, does have some sort of similar themes, even though it's not with the sun so much, it's with the structure, etc. that's going on there. But yeah, I thought, and I thought it was really interesting in this as well as Pyramids, the kind of interrelationships of the working court or the rulership, between the people that the helpers and the support, and actually who can stand up to power and who's really running and who's got the power, and actually what people that are in charge, what they want out of other people, because that was one of the things that really came through about the son, was very much he did not just want people the same as a pat there to kind of tell him what he wanted to hear. He wanted to be challenged. He wanted to kind of people to stand up to him somewhere, even though he was that tyrant. And if people didn't do it right, he was going to kill them anyway. So it was kind of weird and strange character, probably just as alluded to by pretty much here. the influence of the dreams, the influence of the drugs, or whatever the allegory that was in the story.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it takes me back to something you said earlier, Chris, about how the the kid's a brat, and he wasn't ever, that wasn't the problem they were focusing on. They were focusing on trying to interpret his dreams, but the problem was he's a brat, and and that there's a line in here earlier before we even get to all the dreams and stuff where, well, after the first dream, he said when his father was still alive, he returns to his apartment, he kicks his dog, like a dog, a mongrel he's been doting on since his boyhood, and at the time, nobody except the dog expressed any further opinions on the subject. that was like
humorous.
Yeah, nobody's gonna take this kid to task for doing something bad.
Yeah. And I looked at that not just in terms of this kid being able to dream, but any talented kid. So anybody that's got a kid that is good at sports, say for instance, everything else about their life is kind of pushed aside because the school quarterback or whatever else it is, people do not address their bad behavior in terms of discipline within schools and stuff. They're sort of propped up all the time, but don't go and blow it. And sort of you can see how the individual is born by that fact, because people were just fascinated by his talent and by questioning it, but also then realizing that there must be something in it, and just tell us more about how you remember this or what effect it has in your life and all of that kind of stuff that's in the story, and never addressing any of his other behaviors because the signs were there from very early on about all this other stuff that was important, whereas the other stuff maybe not so much,
Right.
I think you mentioned, we all mentioned, I think all of you mentioned this, but with him being pampered and not really ever taken to task even before his father died, I think that was just a result of him being the prince, right? And that no one wanted to challenge him, and in effect challenge his dad, who didn't seem as brutal. He wasn't beheading anyone that we know of anyway. So yeah, I think that was part of it. Is just everyone was just afraid of him, so he was born into this position where everyone was afraid to push back on him or to challenge him in any way. So he felt when he did have the power, he was in shock to power because he had never been challenged. It was always just whatever he wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then there's who was it? I think it was one of the his father, maybe? I think it was his father. He said it's better to search for meaning where meaning is absent than to ignore it where it is present. And I wasn't so sure about I think it was a high priest who said that, yeah. And that being relegated to the high priest kind of made me question that line about, is that is that a true statement? Is that a true statement that he's saying to the prince, or is it just a something to try to make himself look wise and get in his good graces, as we explore the different characters in the court.
I think just that statement in and of itself was interesting, right? Like regardless of who it was who spoke it, and the high priest saying that makes it that much more suspicious, because that is, I guess, the kind of reasoning that leads to, say, the upholding of superstitions or traditions, meaningless traditions, right? Because, well, maybe there was some meaning. Maybe there was a reason why we do this. So let's keep doing this, even though it's maybe causing harm to a lot of people, right? So, and I feel like that's a justification for a lot of religious things that I tend to have issues with. So, yeah, that statement in and of itself, like, nope, don't agree with this, hard disagree, stop it. Because, and I think well, it sounds reasonable, right? That you shouldn't ignore meaning where it is present, but you are also in that process. But the first part of that statement, what is it? Finding meaning, trying to search for meaning where there isn't one,
Mhm.
feels a bit problematic to me. Well, okay, so there's two things to that, right? There is this whole issue that comes up with discussions of free will, that which leads to what is the point? There is no meaning in life. Like if you conclude that there is no free will, then like why do anything? There's no point to anything. Like it can lead to a nihilistic worldview. So then you do want to find meaning in life, and to find some joy in living. So maybe there isn't any meaning, but you try to find some. So there is that aspect to it that maybe makes sense. But in general, like on a smaller scale of, hey, I saw a UFO. Do we think we're getting attacked by aliens? No. Let's maybe think about that a little bit more. So I feel like if meaning exists, it will show up. So it won't be ignored, I think. Anyway, that's my take on that. I did not I did not agree with the priest, is my conclusion.
Very cool.
And I did wonder about the first dream that he has about it's a world absent of men, or absent of people. Period. No one's there. It's this peaceful world. I did wonder. It made me think back to like Children of Men, or geez, the Tchaikovsky Children of Men and Children of Men. Is it
Children of memory.
Memory?
Time.
Children of time.
Time.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I get them all mixed up. Children of Men is a movie, but
Yeah.
anyway, I did wonder if that was kind of a foreshadowing of him, at the end, possibly finding peace in death, and being a place where he no longer exists, and he maybe saw the what was within him to become this tyrant that he became, and knowing that he would it would be a more peaceful place without him, or without people. Period. I guess you could make the case of without him because of what he became, or without people. Period, because of the things that we're all capable of.
Yeah, that's good. See that, Chris? Peeling away the layers. There we go.
See, this is exactly as advertised in my head.
Yeah, and so it was interesting how in a kind of Arabian Nights fashion, the prince is going through one advisor after another, trying to get answers, and I like that aspect of it as well. And he gets to the chief interpreter that the high priest brought in, the chief interpreter of dreams, and he the plump individual has more oil in his manner than most men can comfortably digest. That line cracked me up. But it was just it gave you this feeling that these people that they're bringing in, they're just they're charlatans. They're what's another word for that? I can't remember now, but
Quacks. No,
Yeah.
I'm
Quacks,
sure.
yeah.
Shysters.
Chasers, yeah. But so you have that aspect of it, and you have and then no better than anyone else at trying to interpret these dreams to the prince's satisfaction. And so I love the descriptions of, like you said earlier, Chris, the courtly relationship, the politics within the court there. I thought that was very well done for such a short story. That you really got a pretty good sense of how this little court worked and who these different guys were, and our narrator is one of them, of course, and our narrator is the wizard, the court wizard, who emphatically states he doesn't have any real power. He only deals with illusion. Of course, dreams in and of themselves are a kind of illusion. And so that's what our wizard says he only deals with. And so that comparison to the prince's plight ultimately sets up the wizard to be the best one to help him try to deal with what he's dealing with. So I don't know what you guys thought about the wizard character in and of himself.
For me, he was sort of the same as everybody else in his own way, because he only stayed alive longer by not having an opinion. And when asked for an opinion, he just sort of didn't have one. He talks about the fact that he was very sure of himself or what he needed to do, but actually push came to shove. He didn't. He just kind of stood in the sidelines as well and let the prince kind of do what he wanted. And in the end, kind of had this. I mean, it wasn't exactly a great solution for everybody, and aside from the fact that he kind of indulged himself to the point where he killed himself, isn't it? That's just about right. Like that's pretty much it. But he was no real different from anybody else within the court who were very much, oh, this is what this means and this is what it does in his own way. He just had less of a forthright opinion about it, and it was only when he was backed into a corner that he had to say anything, because he didn't want to do that at all.
Yeah, well, I found it interesting that when he finally does give his opinion, and he does his little bit of philosophizing, he immediately says, "Oh, I failed."
What did you guys make of the fact that he was an illusionist, essentially? Not, I mean, it's like he could be a magician from our world, right? Like just pulling rabbits out of hats and stuff. That seems to be the extent of his power. But magicians who have illusion magic in fantasy books are always interesting, because it feels like that's all they are doing, but then sometimes they have far more power, like what he did in the end with the recreation of dreams for other people, but he was just secretly giving the guy drugs, but everybody else could see the dreams. So yeah, that's just interesting. It feels like, and he seems long lived, right? He seems to have seen a lot of Caliph rule through their time, but he hasn't, what's what I'm looking for? Yeah, so he feels or is set up to be like a powerful person in court, and maybe he is, but it seems political power because of his title, not like really powerful magic that he can do.
Yeah, he's more like a he's more like a I would say like a maester, like a Game of Thrones maester or something like that, or a a snake oil salesman, and,
I was sort of thinking more like court entertainment, like a jester or something like that in some ways, because of the kind of entertaining things that he can do. But I suppose that's not really true, because he does hold some mysticism or the illusion of power, if you know what I mean, from the sun or the tyrant. He has this sort of idea that he could do something if he wanted to.
Yeah, it seems he has, some sorts of collections of alchemical things that could definitely give him the illusion of being a wizard. He did have the ability to make himself kind of look like fire or something like that at one point. So what kind of illusion was he pulling off? Of course, the magic's not explained or anything like that. It's very non what's the word? What's the key word nowadays?
Specific.
Soft magic.
What's that?
Soft magic.
Yeah, soft magic. Yeah, that's the hashtag or whatever. But
magic system.
System, that's the one I'm looking for. Yeah. There's no magic system here. And what magic there is very, very subtle and very, not in your face or what have you. But so you're left to guess on how he pulled that off and what have you. It's just it's just a short story, so I didn't think it would warrant any kind of long explanation on how magic works or anything like that. But it even leads you to guess whether there actually is magic or if it's just something he's pulling off. But pretty cool. cool stuff.
Good story. I like it.
Yeah, it was fun.
It did save his life. I mean, without that, he'd be beheaded,
That's
right?
true.
Without the
That's true.
Yeah.
just like qualities.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And so there was something in that epigraph that I think was very relevant was the line, the pleasure of the true dreamer does not lie in the substance of the dream, but in this, that there are things that happen without any interference from his side and altogether outside of his control. And I think that is ultimately what the prince was looking for, because he, in his life, has control. He gets what he wants. He does what he wants. His father doesn't control him in any way whatsoever. And when he becomes Caliph, he beheads whoever he wants and basically does whatever he wants. And I think his dreams might represent him not having that control and being a freer person for it.
That's interesting.
Just the people around him aren't very free. The rack portion was rough.
Oh, that was that was horrible. Yes,
Yeah, what was that? That was
the wife or
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Donaldson doesn't shy away from the horrible stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
yeah. What do you guys think of this? The freedom. It is not the freedom of the dictator. I think it goes with what you were saying earlier, Jared, about just letting go of control. It is not the freedom of the dictator who enforces his own will on the world, but the freedom of the artist who has no will, who is free of will, which I find interesting. I guess will here is used as like control, not in the free will sense, but in the sense of like the need to impose order or like your will upon the
Yeah.
world. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say you're right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. He was so used to imposing his will on the world and having that go his way that when he came across these things that he couldn't control, these dreams, I think he found that he and he couldn't get an explanation of why that was from his advisors. He couldn't get, they're trying to interpret, which means they're trying to assert some type of control by that interpretation. And that ultimately wasn't what he was looking for. And so when he finally got the drugs that will enable him to live his dreams even while he's awake, that did the trick, I guess.
Yep. That's pretty cool. Not for him, but that's pretty cool.
I mean, of all the ways to go out, I mean, that doesn't sound too bad. I mean, considering what he had done.
Yeah.
I just have visions. I just have visions of Varsha at the funeral and all, just saying, "No, I've been thinking that's pretty cool." It's pretty cool for this guy. Do you not think so? Not for him, but
He saw some good dreams. Maybe he got to see them as he died. It's not cool that he died.
Sure.
The drugs were good. Back to your original point, right? It was about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, not bad. I enjoyed the story very much. It's kind of fable-ish almost. It's like a morality tale kind of like thing. And I love how he plucks from the like Arabian Nights type of setting. And he did that earlier too with one of the other stories. And the jinn who watches over the curse. But but not bad for this was, like I said, one of the shorter stories in the collection. And it's pretty good that we can get this kind of these kind of different layers and stuff and different kind of themes out of
Definitely.
such a short story. So any final parting thoughts you guys might have on this one?
No.
Liked it a lot. I think it was a really great story. I was impressed.
Yeah, cool. Well, Steve, I hope you read more with us because there's a lot of cool stuff to come.
Yeah, I bet.
And
Including
next-
a story called "The Woman Who Loved Pigs."
coming
I have to
soon.
keep bringing that up.
Talk about an alluring premise, eh?
Is it a dark romance book?
You never know.
Romanticy's gone in weird places, hasn't it? Yeah.
maybe that was the first one, right? Yeah. Who knows?
It's a pig fae.
So next month, we'll be talking about the story called Penance. That one's a little longer. It's about 70 or 80 pages, so it's a nice
Start
little
reading now.
novella. And so we'll be doing that next month. So if anyone would like to join us, and let me know, and we will be happy to have you. For now, as I always say, everybody be good to each other, and thank you for watching.